Hi everyone, this is Elizabeth, and today we will be talking about team leadership. So, I just want to preface this presentation by saying I found this chapter of the book a little bit hard to follow just because there are a lot of components that are all related to each other, and the way the book organized it was just kind of difficult for me to fully understand. So, hopefully, between reading the book and my outside research, I've been able to put this presentation together in a way that makes it a little bit easier to understand because I think team leadership is very relevant. It's probably something all of us have experienced before and will certainly experience in the future. So, with that, let's get started. So, we're just going to start with an introduction and a brief history of the theory. We'll then talk about some characteristics of team leadership. We'll discuss the Hill model for team leadership, as well as virtual leadership, which is something that the book kind of dived into quite a bit. And then we'll get into the strengths and limitations and the applications for nutrition and dietetics. So it was kind of difficult to pinpoint exactly who came up with the theory of team leadership or even when. From what I found, it really started to get researched and talked about in the literature in about the 1980s. And what I was able to find was that team leadership really stems from something called functional leadership. And functional leadership addresses specific leader behaviors as they relate to the function of the organization. And it really has to do with how the task of a leader is to make sure that everything necessary for the team and the group are taken care of in order to help them be as efficient and effective as possible. And functional leadership was really developed by studying successful leaders and their behaviors. So, one of the most well known and influential functional leadership theories used in a lot of leadership development programs is called the Action Centered Leadership Model by John Adair. And Adair developed the model to represent how teams kind of come together in these different aspects. So, that first circle shows tasks. And this shows that tasks can only be performed by the team and not by a single person. The team needs constant promotion and retention of group cohesiveness to ensure that it functions efficiently. And individuals have physical and psychological needs that have to be met to help them be effective team members. And so, this kind of Venn diagram shows how achieving tasks builds the team and satisfies individuals. So, for example, if team needs aren't met, or if the team lacks cohesiveness, then the performance of the team is impaired and individual satisfaction is reduced. If individual needs are not being met within the team, then the team will lack cohesiveness and performance of the task will be impaired. So, this is something just to keep in mind as we talk about leadership and in the context of teams. All three of these things really have to come together and be balanced out to make sure that teams are effective and efficient. And with that, we'll start talking about team leadership in specific. So, what exactly is a team? Northouse states that a team is a type of organizational group that is composed of members who are interdependent, who share common goals, and who must coordinate their activities to accomplish those goals. So, a team can really be any number of people who are working towards one common goal. And so, some examples of teams are senior executive teams, quality assurance teams, task forces, and standing committees. These are types of teams that are mentioned in the book. A type of team could also just be a group that you're working with for a project at school. And a little bit later, I'll also talk about nutrition related teams. And one important characteristic of team leadership is the idea of shared or distributed leadership. So while some teams will have one formal leader who's ultimately responsible for the team and their tasks, all teams can benefit from a type of shared leadership. And this is just really leadership in which all members of the team adopt behaviors and share in the responsibility of the team. And research has found that this type of leadership within teams creates less conflict, produces more consensus and trust, and really contributes to the group's cohesion. And these attributes contribute to a more effective and efficient team. And so I wanted to include this just so that as we're talking about team leadership later on, I might use the term, the team leader. And that might pertain or that might be referring to just that one formal leader, or it could be referring to any member in the team who happens to be taking some kind of leadership role in the moment. So now let's get into the Hill model for team leadership. So this table is commonly used to depict the functions and operations of team leadership. It was developed by Susan Colville Hill with a function of simplifying and clarifying the complex nature of team leadership and provide an easy tool to aid leadership decision making for team leaders. So the model starts with that top box labeled leadership decisions and focuses on whether leaders choose to monitor problems or take action. Leaders can act on both internal and external problems, which is that second line there, with the main focus always being on the team's overall effectiveness. Then, in that third line, leaders must decide whether the team needs help with task, relational, or environmental issues. The model also provides a few examples for each action category that can help guide the leader to making the right decision, but it doesn't list all of the potential action steps. By following the model, team leaders can be confident that they have improved the organizational team by solving problems, fostering cohesiveness within the team, and improving performance and team development. So, we're going to dive into a little bit more of what each of these three layers of this model are and how they all contribute to team effectiveness. So, let's dive into how leaders make decisions. As depicted in the Hill model, there are three main decisions team leaders have to make when addressing team issues. Decision number one is, should I intervene or monitor the situation? So, monitoring might include diagnosing problems versus intervening, which is taking remedial action. If a leader decides that they're just going to monitor the situation, then they won't move on to decisions 2 and 3. They'll just continue doing what they're doing and monitoring things to decide whether they need to take action at a later date. If a leader decides that they need to take action, then they'll move on to decision 2, which is, when I intervene, should it be internally or externally? Which is really just asking, is the problem occurring within the group or outside of it? Once they have that decision down, they'll move on to decision 3, which is, do I need to meet task or relational needs? Which is also just asking, is the problem related to the task at hand, or is it between members of the team? So, as I said, the first decision a team leader needs to make is whether they should monitor a problem or take immediate action to remedy it. So, leaders make this decision by assessing the situation and creating a mental model of what's going on, which is really just like a mental conception of what the problem is and any possible solutions that there might be. Leaders have to pay attention to the internal and external work environment and seek out information to understand the context of the team's functioning and the issue that's going on. They must also provide structure and take the appropriate course of action based on the information that they have available to them. So this is an image of McGrath's critical leadership functions, and it illustrates what potential monitoring or action-taking steps can look like. So in quadrants 1 and 2, McGrath illustrates steps for monitoring or remedying internal problems. So leaders can monitor problems by diagnosing group deficiencies that might need to be addressed, or they can take action to correct the issues they identify within the group. Quadrants 3 and 4 illustrate steps for addressing external problems that are happening outside of the group. So leaders monitor external problems by forecasting potential changes in the environment, or they can address these problems by preventing changes that might be consequential to the team. Decision two is deciding whether the task is or whether the issue is task or relational. So, task needs are those that are directly related to getting the job done. So, is there an issue with decision making? Are we having problems with problem solving? Are we having some trouble adapting to changes? Are we not hitting our goals or targets? Or do we need to make plans to get the ball moving? Relational needs are also referred to maintenance needs, or I'm sorry, maintenance functions, and they have to do with your relationships within the team. And they're kind of more concerned with fostering a positive environment, solving interpersonal problems, satisfying team member needs, and developing a cohesive group. And this is where I'm reminded of that um, three circle Venn diagram that we looked at earlier that talks about tasks, teams, and the individual. Because this model focuses on task and relational needs, because research has linked the two to more effective teams. So, effective team leaders are constantly focusing on both task and relational issues and making sure that there's a balance of two. Teams that are well maintained and have good interpersonal relationships are just more likely to work together efficiently and get the job done compared to teams that experience a lot of infighting or teams that are ill managed and disorganized. So, ensuring that there is a balance between task and relational issues and that there isn't, or just ensuring that issues that do arise are getting taken care of and addressed can help teams be more efficient. And the final decision is determining whether the problem is internal or external. Internal problems are those that occur within the immediate team or the group, and these can include task or relational approaches. So maybe they're having a hard time working together, maybe there's a lot of disagreements between the group, or they're having some issues reaching a compromise. And external problems occur in the greater work environment. So these could be problems with other departments, issues with upper management, or could even be outside of the organization completely. And effective team leaders will know how to balance the demands of both internal and external factors and react appropriately to the issues that arise in order to, again, keep up performance and productivity. So, what does putting all of this together really even look like? Once I've decided that I need to intervene and I know that it's an internal issue, what do I do next? So, the book offers some different tasks that team leaders can take to address the issues that they have identified. So, some internal task actions include clarifying team goals, helping the team focus on the long term vision, delegating tasks, and helping to organize the team. They can also get the ball rolling on decision making or training members in new skills. And these are all directly related to getting done that common goal that the team has. Internal relational actions might include coaching team members in their interpersonal skills, fostering collaboration by getting team members to listen to each other's opinions and include each other in decisions, managing conflicts between team members, and satisfying the individual needs of the team members. External environmental actions might include networking and forming alliances in the organization, negotiating for more resources from upper management. Perhaps the team has a really big project coming up and they need a better budget for it. That could be an external environmental issue. Or they could advocate for their team and their successes. Maybe the team's just not getting the recognition that they should. And that's an issue because not getting recognized for your hard work means you might not be getting a promotion or you might not be getting rewards that other teams in the organization might be getting. And a final external environmental action could be assessing environmental indicators so that team members can be aware of how their efforts compare to others. So, This could just be, maybe team members really don't know whether the work that they're doing is actually meaningful or is actually making a difference. So, a good team leader might come up with some assessment tools that help the team members really understand the work that they're doing and the impact that that's having. So, I wanted to put this slide of the Hill model back in here. Now that we've talked about all three of those different components, leadership decisions, actions, and then the task, relational, or environmental issues. And hopefully, we can kind of understand now how these things are all related. So, the leadership decisions trickle down into their actions, and then those actions help collaborate or help foster better team effectiveness and performance. And we'll talk a little bit about team effectiveness now. So, team effectiveness pertains to the team's excellence or their desired outcomes of the work. And some standards of effectiveness have been developed through research from a number of scholars. For example, Hackman et al. Have found 6 enabling conditions that lead to effective team functioning. And so these are just 6 questions that a team leader can ask to make sure that the team is functioning well. And those are: is it a real team? Does it have a compelling purpose? Does it have the right people? Are the norms of conduct clear? Is there support from the organizational context? And is there team focused coaching? And to further support Hackman et al.'s findings, further research from Larson and LaFasto found 8 characteristics that are regularly associated with team excellence. And these 8 characteristics all fall under at least one of those 6 conditions that I just covered. So these 8 characteristics are listed here, and there are a clear elevating goal that the team is working towards, a results driven structure that helps the team stay focused on the common goal, competent team members, a unified commitment to the team and to the task at hand, a collaborative climate, standards of excellence, external support and recognition, and principled leadership. And you might be able to kind of see how these things all tie back to that functional leadership model with the team and individual and task circles, and how everything really does relate to each other and has to be balanced in order for teams to be effective. So, next, I want to touch a little bit on virtual teams because this is something that Northhouse really covers quite extensively in chapter 16 because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the way that it changed how team leaders work. So, Northhouse discussed how even before the pandemic, virtual teams were already being utilized by companies and organizations in order for them to stay competitive and ahead of the game. So, some benefits of virtual teams are that companies and organizations can utilize the best talents from the world. They're not limited to just who's in their concentrated geographic location. Virtual teams facilitate collaboration across time and space, so you can really be in contact with people at all hours of the day if you have to be. You're not limited to what time it is or where you are. And team leadership, or I'm sorry, virtual teams reduce travel costs because teams are able to meet via phone call, video call, live chat. They don't have to be face to face to get their work accomplished. So, virtual teams really help organizations to continue functioning even when physical locations are shut down or unavailable, or when members are living or working in different areas. And while virtual teams do have a lot of benefits, they also have a couple of drawbacks. Some virtual teams might experience less trust and cohesion between team members, and more conflict between team members because things can get lost in translation, and there's just not the added benefit of face to face interaction. The Center for Creative Leadership worked with 140 virtual teams and found that there are 3 key factors that influence the effectiveness of them. And so these are using technology to create connections, managing distance by accommodating different schedules, and structuring the team wisely in order to prevent members from checking out or being less engaged. So, whether teams are in person or virtual, the team structure is important because an effective team helps organizations remain competitive and effective and adapt to the ever changing needs of their company. And I think if the pandemic did teach us anything about work life, it's that virtual teams are probably not going anywhere anytime soon. And all of these skills that are represented in the model for leadership and in leadership theory can still be utilized even when we're in teams that aren't traditional. So let's talk about some of the strengths of the Hill model in specific. One strength is that it focuses on real life organizational work groups and their needed leadership. So it's not an abstract theory that you have to try to conceptualize and figure out how it applies. It's kind of just a straightforward, here's what you have to do to address your problems and to be an effective leader. It provides a method for diagnosis and correcting problems, and it encompasses internal and external factors. Some theories we've talked about really only focus on, the relationship between the leader and a follower. Where this one really talks about external factors as well, such as the organization as a whole. Leadership theory, team leadership theory also provides guidance for designing and maintaining effective teams. And this is especially helpful whenever performance standards are below what the team might want. So the team leader can kind of look at how the team is performing and make a educated plan on how to fix that. It also considers the changing roles of leaders and followers in organizations. So rather than focusing on leadership as a position of power with that one formal leader, the model focuses on the critical functions such as diagnosing and action taking that any member of the team can perform, which, as we mentioned, is a really important part of this theory because it kind of shies away from the notion that only certain people can be leaders and only certain people are leaders. It really shows that any member of a team probably is going to act in a leadership role at some point. And this also helps to be applied to a variety of different settings. So, some limitations to the Hill model. And I just noticed that I left a little thing on the slide here from the template, but that's okay. One limitation of the Hill model is that it is not exhaustive. It lists only some of the skills that leaders might need to take action and address problems, and it'll probably have to be modified by each individual team in order for it to really be relevant to them and meet their specific needs. The model is also complex and assumes that every team member and team leader has a decision-making, group process, interpersonal communication, and conflict resolution skills that are needed to address problems. So leaders might need to spend some time adjusting the framework so that it comes naturally to them and they can follow that decision-making process in a way that makes sense to them. It doesn't really support or provide on the spot answers to questions. It kind of just guides the leader in the direction that they might have to go to solve a problem. So there is still quite a bit of work that's going to have to be done on the leader's end in order to get the outcome that they need. And they might follow the model in one way and find out that that way doesn't actually fix the issue that they're trying to address. And finally, there's limited evaluative research on the model. So, testing and measuring outcomes are pretty limited, and research on team leadership is based on follower perceptions. So, it might be a little bit biased because there isn't really a way to have a kind of like lab setting to research any kind of leadership theory. So, how can we apply team leadership theory to nutrition? There are a number of ways that I think this theory can apply to nutrition, and they're definitely not limited to just three that I have on this slide. So, the first that I thought of is clinical experiences. When we work in any kind of healthcare setting, we are part of a healthcare team. And this is something that I think has been reiterated to us probably all throughout our college careers. And as the team leadership theory states, any member of a team can utilize those leadership skills. So we can use team leadership in the healthcare setting by making decisions, advocating for ourselves and our patients, and fostering a positive environment in relationship with ourselves and the rest of the healthcare team. And doing so will help us meet the best interest and the needs of our patient and help the entire healthcare team be as effective as possible for addressing the issue that we're faced with. Another way we can utilize team leadership is in private practice or in consulting when whether we work with a smaller team of dietitians or even a bigger one. I know that I worked for two dietitians last year who led a team of four of us 100% virtually. So that really ties into what we were talking about with virtual teams. And yeah, there are a lot of unique characteristics for virtual teams that might be applied in a private practice kind of setting if you run a virtual practice, or you can also utilize all those leadership skills in face to face practice. Another setting I thought of nutrition and team leadership existing is in food service. So, this could be commercial food service, a school, a hospital, or a long term care facility, or even at a restaurant. But team leadership is important in the food service setting because it's a very fast paced setting that really requires a high degree of efficiency between all employees. And so, thank you for listening to my presentation. And to wrap up, the theory of team leadership states that any member of a team can develop team leadership skills and can follow this Hill model process that helps them address any issues that the team might have, whether they be internal, external, related to tasks, related to team relationships, or coming from the external environment. And if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them into the discussion post, and I will try my best to answer them. And here are my references, and thank you for watching.